on the one hand, I think it's a little bit to be expected at like when you're 18. My hope is that you feel that you have multiple paths in front of you. And until you have really selected one, it makes sense to me to really explore them.
Right. Yeah.
Um, the challenge becomes when we don't want to choose or cannot choose or feel like we need to do all of these things at once and that we need to do them all at the same level of intensity, that we then just end up burning ourselves out.
Hello, and welcome to Listening for Purpose. I'm your host, Simeon Klepac, and this season of the show, we're talking to people at Valpo about what inspires them and how they discern meaning in their life. Today, my guest is Professor Martin Buinicki, the Richard P. Bepler Distinguished Professor in Humanities. He's been here at Valpo for about 20 years, and he teaches courses in American literature, philanthropy, and most recently game design. So that game design is currently a minor, correct? And that's new?
That's right. We added a minor in game narrative and design just about a year ago, and it really focuses on storytelling in games.
That's awesome. How long have you been involved in game narrative?
So I am one of those people who Stranger Things is a documentary. So I've been playing tabletop role-playing games since the 80s, and I started teaching video game and narrative courses here about 3 years ago in English 200, a course called Playing with Stories, and then for the last 3 years have been offering a course in writing role-playing games. And so putting all those classes together and talking with my colleagues, we decided we had enough to really sort of build a minor that students could pursue.
That's awesome. And has that been well received so far?
I think so. Both of, I mean, those classes do really well. I know that they also students also take courses in CVA, and they really enjoy those classes. And we have at least 2 former students who are now working in the game industry, so that's really great.
That's phenomenal. So you've been here for 20 years. You know Valpo's campus pretty well. You had some new additions to campus and buildings that have
That's
left and
right.
stuff. I'm curious, what is your favorite place on campus? If you've got an hour and you're like, I just want to go sit, read, relax, something, what's your go-to location?
Well, that is a wonderful question. So I will say that about every hour, I will make sure to get out of my office and I walk a loop on campus. So I'll walk around the chapel, past the labyrinth, and then past Merlin on the south of the chapel, and then over past the library. Basically, I just try and walk by all the trees on campus. I think that one of the wonderful things about Valpo are the great trees we have, and so it gives me, just revitalizes me and wakes me up during the course of my day. So I can't say I have one particular place. I just love walking campus.
Yeah, that is like one of the strengths of our university is just we have very well maintained walking paths,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not all straight lines, and that's such a relief.
That's right, exactly.
But there is something very refreshing about getting to go like on a nice long walk, and especially I enjoy going on long walks with my friends,
Mm-hmm.
and that's you get to be active, but then also have that space to like build some community and relationships there.
I know we're going to be talking a lot today about sort of what we read and how that inspires us, but lately I've been reading about how many important figures in history talk about how valuable walking was for them in terms of,
Interesting.
connecting with their thoughts and working things out. And so I've really tried to make that a ritual in my day now.
Yeah, that's good. So I got so now, before we get into the meat of the show, I would love for you to share a little bit more about yourself for our audience. So the way we're kind of framing these introductions this season of the show is by asking 3 questions. So first, where are you? Second, how did you get here? And then third, where are you going? You can take that in terms of your career, your personal life, physical, mental, spiritual, relational, whatever is important for you to share with folks.
Those are wonderful questions. I am at a point in my career where I'm feeling very excited for what possibilities lie in store for me. And one of the reasons I'm excited to talk with you today about some of the texts that have inspired me over the years is I really have just kind of a new perspective on what's possible and on taking action and doing things in your life. And so where I am, I'm at a place where I know what interests me. I know what I want to do, and it's about sort of really going to pursue those things. As I know we're going to talk about when we talk about some of the works that I'm going to discuss today, that wasn't always the case, and it's really been a journey. So when you ask me where I've been, I would say sort of mentally many places, because I have many interests, and I value that. When I was in college, I was a double major in English and musical theater, and I even think I kind of majored in English because it was a way for me to also major in history and philosophy, because it's a discipline that really encompasses a lot of different disciplines. So I've always had really kind of a voracious curiosity, which can be both a strength and a weakness. And so it's taken me quite a while to reach a point in my life and my career where I really feel, at peace with what I'm doing and the kind of work that I enjoy. Where I'm going, I've been really involved not only in growing the game narrative and design minor, but a year ago I got a grant to establish a game center here on campus, and I've been really working hard on trying to get that off the ground. We're hoping it's under construction now. It's going to be in the VUCA, and that will open in the spring. And so a lot of my energy looking towards the future is about making that game center an important place on campus, not only for students but also for area educators, K through 12 teachers, because I am a real believer, after having seen it in my own classrooms, in the power of games in education. And so I want to help students write and make games. I want to help teachers and my colleagues use games in the classroom, and I want students to have a place they can go if they want to play games or make games with their friends.
So what kind of services and activities are going to be encompassed in that game center? Because that's not a very, to my knowledge at least, that's not a super common thing to find on many universities.
Right, and that's one of the things that's really exciting about it. So it will have really 4 main spaces, and within those spaces there will be different activities. So we are having what I'm calling a VR arena, and that's basically just an empty room with some beanbag chairs and a screen where students can use meta headsets and experience virtual reality. I think it's an important form of storytelling that's emerging in video games, and I also think the potential for clinical use, there are a lot of potential uses for VR, and so I think having a location on campus where people can just use it and not have to worry about knocking furniture over or doing something like that will be really important. There's also going to be what I'm calling a couch co-op room. It will have 3 different kinds of consoles, a PlayStation, a Switch, an Xbox, and it's to play with other people so that you can all sit together and play video games together. And then the main space will have tables, computers, consoles, so you can play board games, tabletop role-playing games, console games. And in the back of that room, there is also going to be a streaming studio, because streaming games and streaming art is a major form of entertainment and media now. And so I want students to have a safe place where they can practice that on campus. So it'll have a gaming computer and a camera, and students can start their own Twitch channel if that's something that interests them.
That's awesome. Sounds like this initiative is a lot about kind of seeing what are the needs in terms of space that people need, equipment students need, and then how can we provide that space, but then also providing a space for people to come together when they're gaming.
Right, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I have found really valuable about teaching my writing role-playing games class, especially coming out of the pandemic, is the opportunity it gives for people to interact with one another in a fun, sort of lower stakes way. I see my students gain confidence over the course of the semester as they're playing games with people in their classes, and at the end of the semester we invite community members in to play these games that the students been writing all semester. So it becomes a real confidence booster for them. And I guess also I want to highlight, Simeon, that as I've learned from teaching my courses, not all students have access to technology.
Right.
And so I want there to be a place where students can go if they are assigned a video game to play for a course, or if they want to try a video game that they haven't been able to play because they just don't have the equipment to do it.
Right.
And then again, I want my colleagues to have an opportunity to see what's available and what's possible with games. And that's why the library is going to be important, so they can see this sort of vast array of games that are now out on the market, covering everything from art history to stroke recovery. There's just a number of games doing a number of powerful things, and so I want to make sure there's a place on campus for students and faculty to engage with them.
Yeah, so kind of breaking down those barriers that students have with technology, but also like faculty might not understand the games as a potential learning tool, and so kind of bringing those together, creating a space for people to explore in that way.
Absolutely. I mean, this was a learning curve for me. I mean, I grew up in a time when you went to the arcade at the mall to play video games, and was sort of immersed in that world again, Stranger Things as documentary. And then I went off to graduate school and really did not play any games, really. I mean, I was studying. And then later in life, started playing role-playing games again and saw what a powerful tool they were for creativity and also for just technical writing skills. There's a lot of writing that goes into them. And then in terms of video games, when I saw the kinds of stories that games were telling, this all started when I started writing scholarly works about video games.
Mm-hmm.
And that made me realize that they could be a really great way to teach literary terms and literary techniques to students.
Right.
And so if I had that kind of learning curve, and I'm someone who sort of was really invested in games for quite a while, it makes, I am not surprised that I have colleagues who, when they hear video games or hear games, they can't necessarily imagine how they might be used in the classroom. And certainly that might be true for K through 12 teachers also. So I want the center to be a place where they can learn and grow with that too.
That's awesome. I know. So when I was growing up, my public library actually had they had the special teen section of the library. But part of that was they had a big TV and they had like an Xbox and a PlayStation and a Nintendo Switch, and that was kind of a space for high schoolers and middle schoolers to come like after school or whatever, and just a place for people to come together and socialize and have that bring them together, which I think that's something I've always appreciated is about video games is the I guess the community and the collaborative aspect of it, and because I think like we oftentimes when we think about this, like we have the like assumption of like someone like sitting in the dark on their PC alone in the room and like not going out, and like that happens, but I think there's so much joy and so much fun to be had in when people are gaming in community, and especially like with like tabletop games like that create like having those creative like those creative journeys together. So I think having a space for that on campus is going to be really special. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, as you can tell, I'm very excited about it. And again, when you ask about sort of where I'm going, when I think about the trajectory of my career here at Valpo, I hope that sort of one of my legacies might be this game center and the way it becomes part of the fabric of campus. I'm also a game writer myself and a game designer myself, and I've been doing that more and more over the last few years, and so I'm also really excited to continue that work and see how it continues to grow and expand.
Awesome. Watch out, guys. It's coming to the Steam store soon. Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So let's dive into the meat of our discussion with a just quick introduction of our topic. This season of the show, we're diving into the things that inspire us and help us discern and think about purpose in our life. Whether that be a story, a movie, book, a really high-quality podcast just like this one. And so, Professor Buinicki, what have you brought for us to talk about today?
Yeah, so first of all, I should say this is a very dangerous question to pose to an English professor because I could literally send you a syllabus full of works that have.
You almost did.
I did. I know it was. Yeah, I could not choose just one. I had to give you two. Um, so I should also say, Simeon, I'm at a point in my life where I realize that there's never just one thing. Like over the years, different books have spoken to me at different times. And so when you first sent this to me, this question, and I began to think about myself as a college student, I remembered reading the play Cyrano de Bergerac as a freshman.
Mm-hmm.
And it really struck a chord with me, and I've been reflecting on it since you asked me on the show, and I wanted to sort of talk about what it meant for me at the time and what I recognize about the play now. For those of you who may not know the story of Cyrano de Bergerac, he is a sort of Renaissance man. He's good at many, many things. Mm-hmm. He's admired by many, but he also has a really kind of chip on his shoulder, and that's because he has an enormous nose. And so has gone through life kind of being picked on or being insecure about that facial feature.
Right.
And to a certain extent has sort of overcompensated by trying to pursue excellence in all things. The other part of the story that's very famous is, of course, he's in love with a woman named Roxanne, who is also in love with a friend of his who recruits Cyrano to help him woo her.
Right, classic love triangle, but taken to another level.
Exactly. So his friend Christian is incredibly handsome, but not very well spoken. Cyrano provides the poetry, and sort of they work together to woo Roxanne for Christian.
Right.
Because Cyrano doesn't believe in himself, and he doesn't believe that she could love him for him. So here's the thing, Simeon, that's been on my mind about this play. At the time I read it as a freshman, what I thought really connected with me, and what did connect with me at the time, was this moment early in the play when he's speaking with a friend, and his friend is asking him how it is that he could pursue so many things. Like, he's a swordsman, and he's a scholar, and he's a poet, and he's a musician, and he's a playwright. He's all of these things. And he says, well, I was like someone in a maze. I was lost. I had all these different places to go, and I didn't know what to do. And so I did the simplest thing. And his friend said, well, what was that? And he says, I decided to be admirable in all things.
Mm.
And at the time, I just found that so inspiring because I wanted to shoot for excellence in everything I did. I've already told you I was a double major.
Right.
I loved the idea of being a Renaissance person and just sort of knowing many things and excelling at all of them. When I got into playing chess, I had a friend who got into playing chess, and we'd play 3 games at a time so we could play that many more games all
Right.
at once.
Yeah, and then you can have a tiebreaker, which is essential.
That's right. And so at the time, what that play meant for me was it was aspirational. It made me it inspired me to pursue excellence. What I have come to realize looking back and thinking about that time in my life is that the other part of the play that I didn't recognize was resonating with me so strongly was that Cyrano felt like he had to prove something to the world.
Mm.
He was not necessarily intrinsically motivated for excellence. I do think he was to a certain degree, but he was also kind of lashing out at the world that he
Right.
felt had been cruel to him. And as I looked back on myself in my early years of college, I was much the same way. I had been bullied as a child. I had some insecurity. And so I think that on the one hand, the play really spoke to me because I was inspired by its message of pursuing excellence in all things. But honestly, that is an incredibly difficult, painful way to live,
Yeah.
right? And unfortunately, I think we live in a culture that can really kind of encourage that kind of just spreading our attention really thin and trying to do everything, at full speed. And I certainly did that. And it's only now, in retrospect, that I realize the value of depth, of really focusing and of just pursuing something because you love it, not because you're going to be the best at it. It actually took running for me to learn that lesson.
Running will teach you that lesson.
Exactly. It doesn't matter how hard you train. There will always be some. Well, for me, it didn't matter how hard I trained. There would always be someone faster. But I just loved running for running. I didn't learn that lesson for maybe 15 or 20 years after I graduated college. So I guess when I think about that text, it did inspire me. In fact, I wrote that quotation that I paraphrased for you on my door. Back in the day, we didn't have Facebook.
Wow.
You had to put paper on your door and you wrote on it if you wanted to sort of say your piece to the world. I really wanted that to be kind of my motto for living, that I would try and be excellent at all things. That is a recipe for exhaustion.
Yeah.
So I am grateful for that time of my life. I highly recommend the play. There's actually a very funny Steve Martin version of the play called Roxanne.
That's what Roxanne is.
Yes, where he's a firefighter.
Oh.
So yeah, it's a very fun movie and not a bad retelling of the story.
Awesome. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back.
The Calling and Purpose in Society, CAPS, Fellows Program is a signature program of the Institute for Leadership and Service. CAPS is professionally relevant, socially engaged, and rooted in reflection. It's more than just a summer internship. CAPS provides students with the opportunity to address some of society's most complex and challenging issues through work at nonprofit organizations on the front lines of environmental conservation, refugee resettlement, education and literacy, the role of the arts and humanities, basic social services, disaster relief, and human flourishing. Summer expenses are covered with a generous stipend. Some placements even include housing and food. Current sophomores, juniors, and seniors are invited to apply from all majors and colleges here at Valpo. The CAPS application deadline is January 13th, 2025. Prepare your resume, personal statement, and unofficial transcript. You can reach out to the Career Center in the Hari Union for help polishing your resume. If you would like to explore your calling and purpose in life this summer, check out our social media and website for more information, or email lead.serve@valpo.edu.
Hello, and welcome back to Listening for Purpose. Today I'm talking with Professor Martin Buinicki, and we were just talking about Cyrano De Bergerac, and you brought up the topic of kind of pursuing excellence in all things. Mm-hmm. And that's something we talk a lot about here at ILAS, because I think kind of that theme of having a lot of passion and a lot of different passions and pouring yourself into all of them, I think that's something that a lot of people here at Valpo feel. And we kind of talk about the epidemic of Valpo overcommitment among students, where you've got your classes and then you work and then you have this club and this club and this club and this club, and then all of a sudden you're only getting like 4 hours of sleep at night. And so I'm interested, is that the way that you experienced your college experience? And do you see that happening? How do you see that playing out on campus?
Okay, those are great questions. So first of all, in terms of my own college experience, absolutely, right? I was a double major, and one of those majors was musical theater, which meant every night were rehearsals that often went till 11 o'clock or midnight. I had a full load of English courses, and I was trying to pursue hobbies, like I mentioned chess earlier. So I felt like I was going at full speed all the time.
Wow, yeah.
And again, Simeon, I don't want to tell you that I didn't. There was some part of me that really enjoyed that and valued that, and I suppose I had to sort of go through that period of my life to begin to understand what it is I really wanted to do. I do see it on campus, and I do feel as though it is. On the one hand, I think it's a little bit to be expected at like when you're 18. My hope is that you feel that you have multiple paths in front of you, And until you have really selected one, it makes sense to me to really explore them.
Right. Yeah.
The challenge becomes when we don't want to choose or cannot choose or feel like we need to do all of these things at once and that we need to do them all at the same level of intensity, that we then just end up burning ourselves out. And so I think that I was surprised thinking about the course of my life when I started graduate school in English and for the first time really just focused on that one subject. It was incredibly freeing and incredibly rewarding. Again, there's something to be said for depth,
Right.
for not just spreading yourself out over many, many things, but just going deeply into one. And that's what graduate school was for me.
Yeah.
And I should say that it's not as though everything then ends. I mean, once I finished my PhD, I auditioned for community theater. Like, I found a way to work performing back into my life. And I would say, actually, even my role-playing game writing and then performing, I'm on a Twitch stream with a role-playing game group. I have found ways to integrate those parts of myself into my life, but not with this idea that I must be excellent in all of them.
Right. Yeah. And like and you're doing it because of the love for that thing, not because of having to prove something.
Yes, yeah, and I think that is crucial, right? The idea that I'm choosing these things and putting in the time or the effort because I love them and because I want to, and not because I feel like I somehow have to prove my value to the world. Nobody has to prove their value to the world.
Yeah, and I think that's something that maybe that plays into people being so committed at Valpo, is that, like you said, like, it is good to explore and see what you're interested in, but then I think what can happen is people feel the social pressure and they feel that obligation, and they're like, well, if I'm not on the e-board of this thing, then like these people are gonna hate me for like not showing up for them or whatever,
Right.
And then all of a sudden it's not actually like there's a decision there to be made, and then they're holding on to it when they really don't need to.
Yeah, that's right. You don't have to be a leader in every club. There's that you can bring things to the table without having to feel like you stand out all the time in everything you do. And honestly, Simeon, I think part of why I am really kind of drawn to games right now is I also feel as if students are terrified of failing, which I completely understand. The stakes seem incredibly high, but if you can never fail, then you probably will never take risks. And I feel like games provide a safe place where you can play, you can experiment, you can win and you can lose. I don't think anyone goes into college feeling like they have that space, and yet that is what a college is. We are a place where you can try, fail, learn, and do better. But I think that often students feel like their job is to succeed the first time, and that's just not the case.
Yeah, and people feel like, oh, I have this high stakes thing. This is a tough class. This is like these people counting on me, when really, like, sorry to say, guys, if you're going to grad school, like your bachelor's degrees, it's important, but like it's another piece of paper, and nobody's gonna know what you got on your freshman physics or whatever,
Right.
So like we have the space to try and fail, but it doesn't feel like that.
No, and again, it's easy for me sitting here now to say that grades are not the only thing. Certainly when I was a student, I felt like grades were the only thing. Again, I was trying to be Cyrano De Bergerac. But after all of these years, what I remember about my classes it's certainly not my grades. It's the experiences I had. It's the things I read, right? The fact that these books stay with me shows that it was the content and not really sort of my performance in any one class that made the difference. Again, it's one of those things that is probably almost impossible to hear when you're in the midst of it.
Right.
But it can be a worthwhile reminder, just sort of sometimes, it's worth going to just hear the concert.
Yeah. Well, speaking of hearing the concert and engaging in our academics, let's transition and talk about the second text you brought us.
Yes. So thank you for that. So the second text I brought is 20 Years at Hull House. And actually, this text was introduced to me by Elizabeth Lynn, who was the founding director of the Institute for Leadership and Service here at Valpo.
Oh, go figure.
Yeah. And I was teaching for the first time a class that I designed called Traditions of Giving and Serving in American Life. And it was designed to give students an opportunity to learn about the philanthropic sector in the United States, to read literature about giving, and to think about their own values. And so Elizabeth had recommended this book to me, and I read it, and there's so many wonderful things to say about Jane Addams in this book. But
she's a phenomenal writer in this. I was reading it in my living room, and I kept turning over to my roommate and being like, check out what she said. This is so good.
Yeah, it's really great, and such an important figure in American history that, you know, other than knowing you're on the Jane Addams, if you're in Chicago, you may not know her, right? But there's a highway named after her. Anyway, the chapter that I mentioned to you is called The Snare of Preparation. And it really struck a chord with me in two ways. The first is what it makes me think about in terms of my profession as a teacher. Because she studied the humanities. She was really invested in the humanities. And then she went and she traveled Europe after she graduated, and she saw in England real poverty for the first time. Mm-hmm. Just really desperate poverty. And it made her question the very value of the education she'd been pursuing. The passage, if you don't mind me reading it,
absolutely,
that stuck with me, and I actually put it on my syllabus for this class.
Here, we'll get some good good page turning audio.
I put this as an epigraph on my syllabus. She says, as she looks back at her time in school, "This is what we were all doing, lumbering our minds with literature that only served to cloud the really vital situation spread before our eyes. It seemed to me too preposterous that my first view of the horror of East London, I should have recalled De Quincey's literary description of the literary suggestion which had once paralyzed him. In my disgust, it all appeared a hateful, vicious circle which even the apostles of culture themselves had admitted. For had not one of the greatest among the moderns plainly said that, quote, conduct and not culture is 3/4 of human life." So basically what she's saying is here she's confronted with human suffering, and what she thinks of is a literary illusion.
Right.
And I firmly believe that literature and the humanities do not blind us to the world and the needs around us. Mm-hmm. I think that it can open us up to that and help us to empathize with other people and to think about how we might make the world a better place. And I actually think that if Jane Addams were a little bit more charitable with herself, she'd recognize the same was true for her, because the entire book is full of literary references. I mean, she draws on her humanities background all the time in this book. But I really take that quotation as a challenge and a reminder for me as a professor that I'm not just helping students become better readers, or I'm not just helping them sort of know the great works of literature. These works will help them understand and make a difference in the world. And I just want to always keep that front and center.
Yeah, so like not just making it about, oh, congratulations, you read a bunch of like old books, but like the way that you read and the ideas you engage with shapes the way that you see the world, and then hopefully the way you engage with the world.
Absolutely, and then it can help give you the tools, and I think even the sort of emotional strength that it takes to deal with the world. So that is so that really resonated with me, and I've kept it with me since then. The other thing that's so important about this chapter, and why it came to my mind, Simeon, when you asked me, it's called The Snare of Preparation, and that's a reference to a term that Leo Tolstoy uses. And what Addams says about this chapter is, we take young people, and I say we, like culture, society. You're a young person, and you want to make a difference, and you're excited, and you're full of energy, And she argues what we do is we say, not yet. You're not quite ready yet.
Mm-hmm.
You still have a lot to learn. You still have things you need to do and prepare for before you can make a difference. And she argues that by the time that's done, the fire's out. And and so you have students who are not sure that they can do what they want to do, and so maybe they just need to go to graduate school. Not because they really desire to go to graduate school, but because they feel like they need more preparation.
Right.
And so when I think, and for me, where this comes out is, so about 5 years ago is when I started writing role-playing games. And I'm fortunate, and I think we are all fortunate, that the gateways to entrance are so much lower now because of the internet. So we used crowdfunding. We got people to help us raise the money so that we could publish our first adventure. When I think about students and I think about the passion and the fire that they have, I want them to feel like they can take imperfect action. I guess this goes back to what we were just saying, right?
Success and failure, right?
Exactly. You don't have to be perfect, and you don't have to have every single thing ironed out before you try something. I don't want students to feel caught in the snare of preparation. Which is not to say, I mean, obviously I believe in education. I want people to go to school. I want people to gain skills, but I don't want students and people to feel so paralyzed by the possibility of falling short that they never try at all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something, I mean, I've even been given that advice, like by someone for my career, just looking at what do you want to do? Like what matters to you? And what do you need to do to get it?
Yeah.
And like, is there something where like if you're going to be an engineer, you need an engineering degree, you need to you need to have that training, but you might not need a master's. Like if that matters to you, if you don't need to take that extra time and you can just do it, like just go for it, and know what you're capable of, know what you really want, and then try it, and be ready to learn on the fly.
Right. And I definitely think when it comes to entrepreneurship, business, or any sort of creative endeavor, we are kind of primed to look for gatekeepers and wait for kind of permission. I certainly felt that way, right? I thought that to be a writer, I would have to find a publisher, and I'd have to find an agent, and I'd have to have all of these steps. Well, no, you need to write a book, right? You need to write a book. And then, again, we are living in a moment in history where the barriers to entry are incredibly low. So if you want to design a video game and you can't get hired by a video game company, you can still design a video game. And you can put it on Steam, and you can put it out there. The same goes for music. The same goes for so many things. And I don't want to make it sound like it. Of course, it's not easy, and of course, it's not going to sort of make you $1 million or something. But I really feel as if the snare of preparation is an idea that that Addams wrote about well over 100 years ago now. But I still see our students getting caught in it. Again, I think it's because we want to be excellent and because we're afraid of failing, and so we will continue getting ready instead of acting. And I just think there comes that moment in your life when you have to decide to act. And again, this is one of those things that it's easier for me to see that now at this point in my life than it was then.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I thought it was when I read the Addams chapter, the kind of interplay between that like preparation and that civic engagement that stood out to me, because that's even like what Addams is doing. She's saying like, well, I read this and then I went and saw this, and then this is the way that I was formed to be ready to like jump into this charitable work.
Yes.
And I think that we have, like, I know students today have a lot of things that they care about. They see a lot of problems in the world, but we don't feel ready to tackle them. We don't feel like that's a big thing. I don't know what I can do. And so I wonder, do you have any thoughts about like we have those kind of like institutional like gatekeepers for this career or whatever, but do you think that have you seen that apply also to like our philanthropic work and our community engagement?
Okay, that's a great question. Well, what I do like about the example you raise, and just, in case people are not familiar, so Jane Addams opened Hull House, which was a settlement house based on a model she had seen in Great Britain. And basically, what she writes about in the chapter we're discussing is she knew she wanted to make a difference and she got tired of just waiting. And so she said, you know what? I'm just going to buy this house in this working class district in Chicago, and I'm just going to live there, and I'm going to care for my neighbors, and I'm going to throw the doors open. I mean, it's really great to read the rest of the book and see just how much she learns through doing. Like, she did not know what she was doing other than, I'm tired of waiting. I'm just going to move there and help people. I do think, Simeon, that Valpo students are very good about volunteerism. I do think that there is this sort of recognition that one can get involved and make a difference. I do sometimes wonder, in the philanthropic sector in particular, the degree to which our students imagine it as a living or as a career. I mean, I'm not sure. I haven't seen lately the number of students, say, creating their own nonprofits as I think I used to.
Right.
So I don't know if there is that sense of uncertainty about how to go about it. But no, I think our students are pretty good about wanting to get involved. I do, and volunteering their time. I do wonder about your other question about, are these problems too big? Are these things too big? Whether or not they are willing to sort of experiment with solutions, that I'm not sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. And last question I have for you is, if you were to take what we talked about today and provide the listeners, folks on our campus, with one little nugget, idea, phrase, something, one little thing to challenge them in the way that they're discerning their purpose in their lives, what's one little thing you would give them?
I hope this is getting at what you're asking me, Simeon. I think that what I would want students to know and think about is that they are enough as themselves, without sort of getting an A in all of their classes or being the president of the e-board. They are valuable human beings just by being here. And so give yourselves a break. Give yourselves a break.
Give yourselves a break,
Give yourselves a break. That would be my lesson.
Awesome. Perfect. Professor Buinicki, thanks so much for coming on. This is a great conversation. I love talking about just the just the finding things that bring you joy and the things that you love, and not being afraid to jump into those,
yes,
whether you succeed or whether you fail, because at the end of the day, you're doing what you love, and you're pursuing that. So,
that's a very good nugget.
Boom. There you go.
All right. Thank you.
Take care. This has been Listening for Purpose, Our Campus, Our Stories, a production of the Institute for Leadership and Service at Valparaiso University. This episode was recorded and edited by me, Simeon Klepac, with the help from Kat Peters and Gabby Unziker. For a video version of the podcast, check out the Institute for Leadership and Service YouTube channel. For information about the Institute for Leadership and Service, the CAPS Fellows Program, or the Allen Scholars Program, check out our website at valpo.edu/ILAS, or email us at lead.serve@valpo.edu. If you enjoyed this episode, send it to a friend. This show's for us, for our campus, seeking to uplift our stories and journeys. Thank you for joining me this week, and I'll see you next time.
society.